All right, guys, my name is Khadroth, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the state of FGO. I think a lot's been said here recently due to the news that just came out on JP. I've seen a lot of doom posting, a lot of people basically saying, hey, look, I'm really worried about the game. I've even seen some people say that they're quitting. I don't really think that's a valid criticism, but hey, it is what it is. I'm going to talk to you guys about where I think JP currently sits and why. I think that's the best thing I can do, is to talk to you guys about some of the good things that they've done, as well as some of the things I think that are giving a lot of people some anxiety. I think chief amongst those that we can easily start with is something like the coin system. I'm going to actually have a video coming out on this relatively soon. I got to get in the recording studio here and actually do it. But again, I think the coin situation overall has led to a lot of sort of animosity amongst the player base, especially directed at the devs. It's not that people don't like the grailing system. In fact, I would argue that the grailing system is actually one of the best things that they have done, being able to grail to 120 now. Honestly, I think the append system is a little bit of a wash, and not that it's not a good system, but more that its implementation is a little bit weird, because I think a lot of people would sit there and tell you like, hey, those first two appends are kind of nice, but that third append is very situational and really depends on the unit. And so that's where I'd say that's more of a wash as far as systems go so far. But I do think the grailing's good. I do think the servant coins, if we had enough, would be great. I think this would fulfill the need for there to be a drain of the player's resources as well as time, keep the player going, give them that treadmill to kind of keep investing in the game and still feeling like they're actually making progress. The problem with this is, and I've talked about that in again my how FGO can improve video, that basically this is a huge problem for them, because you have a system that people cannot partake in if they don't have the coins. So coins are a big issue that I think are sitting on everyone's mind. I think especially today, one of the big concerns that we saw was with regards to the story. Lost Belt 7.2 seemingly has been delayed. Now, the reason I say seemingly is because I'm not entirely sure that it wasn't planned, or again, just something that they maybe had known could happen for a while. We got told basically late January was going to be the date for this, and I wasn't surprised. In fact, when I first heard that, I immediately assumed January 31st was going to be our date. Why? Well, you could maybe say that that's just a little bit of doubt in the devs, and kind of seeing that they have been on a really stalling oriented pattern for a long time. But I think it's also just that again, I expected this to be the case due to it being a relatively short time period between the two chapters. I think I watched what they did with Lost Belt 6, and none of this really surprised me. I just kind of sat there and been like, oh, I'm surprised it's January. Thank God they're not stalling too much. It's very funny because I've seen a lot of people reacting and saying like, holy crap, we're only getting, you know, a month's worth of time, but that's way too long that they're stalling for. Whereas I sat there and said like, thank God it's only a month. This could have been way longer. And again, you need only go back to something like Lost Belt 5 to see where they actually spent like 3 to 4 months in between the chapters. And I can safely say I don't want that to happen again. So I think a lot can be said about their story pacing. I talked about that in another video as well, that to me, honestly, the story pacing has become abysmally slow, especially for the main chapters. That is a huge issue that I think a lot of people resonate with. I think whether they realize it or not, it sort of curbs enthusiasm in the game when we go too long without story chapters. I think a lot of people would be quick to point out, well, hey, we got 6.5 earlier this year, and that's true, but that necessarily isn't a main story chapter so much as it is a tangent or maybe an in-between point. It's the main story chapters that actually move things forward, and so as we see, then you almost have to go back a year and a half basically to Lost Belt 6 in order to get your last main story chapter. So a year and a half between parts is really long-winded. Again, I definitely know that they tried to fill that gap with the 0.5s. I definitely know that you have other things like events that fill that in and are important, but I think they can do a better job there. I think a lot of what has aggravated people is this seeming delay. And a lot of that comes from, if you guys look on the screen here, the updated campaigns, as you guys can see. They basically announced today that they've extended the time period of some of these campaigns, and they essentially said that, hey, look, now you guys get them, but they're lasting through February now at this point. So that's where a lot of people are like, what the heck, you know, why didn't we get this faster? Why is this taking so long? What has happened? Nobody can really answer that question other than the devs themselves. We did get extensions for not only, you know, the actual like login campaigns and story completion milestones, but we also got extensions for things like your blue cubes, your blue prisms, which again are sort of what's going to help you guys clear story in a lot faster way here. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's nice that they've done all of this, but yes, it does sort of reek as if it's a delay. Now, the only theory I can give you guys is one that I've constantly seen circulating in Japanese media here lately. It's COVID. Basically, everything I have seen has indicated that Japan is going through a huge wave of COVID. They don't want to mention that, and you might be surprised as to why not, because some people would sit here and be like, why don't they just mention that? The problem with that is they've already had COVID delays before, and they kind of promised that they were done with it and that they had moved on with it and they'd moved past it. So they may come out and actually say it at the live stream. Yeah, sorry, we have to apologize. That's what happened. But for right now, they're not telling you that until they can maybe give you a more heartfelt personal apology live on stream or something like that. Or maybe they just try to skirt the issue and avoid it entirely. I don't know, but that's definitely a thing. Honestly, I think they've still done a lot of other things to gain the good graces of the community, but in some ways they've sabotaged themselves. And that's where I don't want to try to encourage doom posting in any way by this video here. I'm just going to say again that there's reasons to be positive still. There's reasons to look forward to the future. But naturally, if you look back at the product of what they've done, it's always been like a step forward kind of with a step back. And so what I would talk about here with regards to this is that you have an issue seemingly with, for instance, take Halloween. We got a 3-in-1 Halloween event that's going to be coming out this year on NA. That was, again, you know, coming up on almost 2 years on JP, really more like a year and a half right now. But that was a great event. A lot of people liked that. Even that was stally. So if you actually look back at it, you can sit there and see that they actually took up all of October with that event. I'm okay with that from a certain standpoint, because what they did was functionally give you a main interlude. It's not a main interlude because it's not available for purchase yet on JP, but they gave you 3 old events in one. You got all of the welfares, all of the old craft essences from those events, and you also got new story from them as well, and that all segued into a new event. I actually thought it was a really cool refresher, recap, and sort of revitalization of Halloween. And I've seen a lot of people say that they really want them to do more like that. And I think they could, but naturally they need time. And then the downside to this, as we've seen, is they really aren't running main interludes anymore. We've gotten some here and there, but they're very few and far between. And I think right now that's a big sticking point in the community, because that's how people want to get their welfares back. There's a lot of these units that people really want that they're not getting. I think similarly you run into another issue there too, especially on the free-to-play side of things, where they've kind of, by virtue of not doing reruns of events, stopped giving out a lot of rare prisms to your free-to-play crowd. And thus, as a result of that, you've not made it very easy for the community to actually purchase those welfare units. I do like the change that they have made with regards to a lot of the things in the rare prism shop, which is that as you move forward, things like costumes, things like main interludes, if you complete the requirement in order to get them, they are now free. They do not cost. The one thing that hasn't changed is the actual welfare itself. Well, I can understand gating that. I see another issue there where, hey, you've got to give us rare prisms in order to be able to purchase those. And I'm not saying this from a me perspective, I'm saying this from a community-wide perspective. My JP account's actually still pretty good because it's been playing so long that it does still have a lot of those rare prisms saved up, and I am hoarding them in case we do get more welfares. But sadly, this is the case for a lot of newer players where they just don't have it. They did make a change allowing you to get a rare prism copy from leveling up a welfare, but that also requires you to have a welfare to level up. And again, with the rate of sort of everything kind of slowing down a little bit on JP, this has been a little bit of an issue. We haven't gotten as many events, we haven't gotten as much story, so there naturally has not been nearly as much inflow of rare prisms as a result. I think generally the stalling in in general purpose is bad. I think that's something they've got to work on. We were just talking about that on stream before I hit the record button, that essentially, you know, it's possible that they could actually make it so, hey, instead of having a dead month, why don't we have dead weeks, where in between events you would just have 1 week. The problem with that is we're not aware of the logistical side of things going on in Le Single. It's entirely possible that that's just not something that can be done. There could be various bottlenecks in the process. It may be better for them not to hold back and to just go. So while that sort of thing may sound better, hey, you only get 1 week in between an event that's dead versus 1 month lumped all together all of a sudden, it just may not be a feasible thing for them. So that is a little bit of an issue. As for hiring, this is something that I've talked about personally here, and that's if you actually go to Le Single's site here, and allow me to just switch gears real quick. But essentially what they've done is they now have a new page up for hiring, including graduate recruitment and mid-career recruitment. Last I checked, this was not here before. And seemingly from looking at it, it's interesting and does allow you to pretty quickly and easily apply. In fact, I would argue if you're someone out there watching this now and you think you might have some sort of candidacy to go work with them, maybe you speak Japanese, do it. You might actually be surprised, because they definitely seem to be desperate right now for hiring. But as I look towards their mid-career recruitment, this is where the issue comes in. There's a lot of jobs still here on this list that they're recruiting for. Now, that might seem concerning to all of us. A lot of us have wondered and seemingly seen that, you know, from various interviews that they've done, they're seemingly short-staffed. And that has even been talked about by both Nasu and Takeuchi as well as Mr. Chu at various points. I'm not sure they haven't dealt with it some, because honestly, the first time I looked at this webpage months ago, there were even more listings. So right now, it does appear like it's been cut down some, but they're still largely hiring for a lot of these positions. That's concerning. However, from what we've heard of them, they're also willing to basically just take anyone that they think is qualified. So this could also be the case that they're just leaving their website open for recruitment purposes in case, you know, someone who is exceptionally talented in the position comes along and decides they want to work for them. They're basically saying, hey, we can make room. So this doesn't necessarily mean that they are in dire need of each one of these positions, but it is a concerning thing, as we've heard from them in those interviews. So I think that is logically another issue there. I think overall the status of FGO is, especially as we look at the hiring practices, as we look at the stalling, as we look at the seeming delay of story, concerning. But I'm going to tell you guys that they still have a lot of good stuff that they've done for us in the past. They have a lot of good systems that they've implemented, some that honestly from a game development perspective, I've looked at that and said like, wow, that was actually really smart what they did. So I don't think the brain trust is gone. I don't think that they're incapable of producing good quality content as they move forward. I think it's just we're in a little bit of a rough patch, and that may be caused by, again, strains of not hiring very much, of low overall production staff. And then similarly, it could be something where, hey, yeah, maybe you've got COVID piling on top of that. Maybe it's not making it even any easier for them. I'm not trying to give them excuses so much as I'm trying to say this is a very logical set of circumstances to find ourselves in, but you're right to be at least somewhat upset by this. I'm not going to tell you to grab your pitchforks and get out there with your torches and try to burn down Le Single. That's not worth it. Honestly, the notion that people are somehow quitting the game because the Lost Belt got delayed by a week is rather asinine. I can guarantee you that anyone that's been invested in this game for so long is not going to quit just because the thing they were waiting on got pushed back a week. They would feel really dumb quitting and then coming back a week later only to see, oh yeah, okay, here's the thing I actually was waiting on, because you know it would happen. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm still going to say this is a concern and it's something they've got to deal with. So I think the reason you're okay being upset about this is because they never should have gotten in this circumstance in the first place. I think this is the sort of thing where when they do this, they can naturally expect it because of how much they've stalled and delayed. Naturally, you're going to run into a problem here and there. And when you've sort of taken the community's goodwill for granted all of these years by stalling, by pushing things back, all of a sudden now, when you finally have to delay something, it looks really bad. So again, I think the state of FGO is totally brought on by the devs themselves, but regardless, I still think there's a lot of positive reasons to look forward to the future of FGO. Namely the fact that personally, I feel like there could be a lot of changes coming as well, and that's why they're holding back so much. I've seen it time and time again where the devs seemingly hide a card up their sleeve and then pull something out all of a sudden, unexpected from the community. We even heard from in the interviews as they talked about how they had wanted to do stuff like the append system since all the way back at Lost Belt 1. A big chunk of why they made the move to Lasingle under Aniplex away from Delightworks was apparently to help resolve some of that bottlenecking. So hopefully things are flowing smoother as a result, regardless of delays, regardless of maybe staffing issues. I'm still going to say I'm optimistic for this game, and I think there's a lot to come. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to. Let me know what you guys are concerned with. Let me know down below, and I'll see you for the next video.